Hello, everybody. It is Damo here, and I'm coming to you with a recorded coach call. We got our live coach calls 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time every Friday. So if you can make it, would love to have you on. If not, send in your questions, and I'm going to answer them. And I can record this, and you can watch it back to help you with your HYROX, your training, and making progress. So let's talk about a couple of things. Now, these are some things that I've been helping people with this week, and lots of people with the same sort of problem. So we're going to talk about it. And one of those things is zone 2 running. Okay, zone 2. If you're like, what the hell is zone 2 running? I will explain. Or you're someone that's like, that's me. I struggle with zone 2 running. And so zone 2 running is running slow, right? Which is crazy, right? Because sometimes we think running slow should be easier than having to run really fast. But zone 2 running is that run. It's that long, slow run. Okay. Now, why is zone 2 running important? Why is running slow important for a long period of time? Now, zone 2 running, as we call it, means that you're working in your heart rate zone of 60 to 70%, right, of your max heart rate. Now, this is a controlled zone. It's conversational, right? But at this point, the energy system that is being used is purely aerobic. Now, when we say aerobic, it's oxygen. Oxygen is being used to fuel the effort. If we think about like sprinting, if you had to do like a 100-meter sprint, that's what we call anaerobic, where we stop using oxygen and we start using stored energy in the muscle, because aerobic energy cannot produce super high amounts of force and power. So we've got to use like ATP, phosphate, creatine, getting technical, but basically stored fuel in the muscle, right? That's why you can only sprint for a short period of time, because once it depletes, right, then you need to restore it. And we can only restore that by resting. So when we're going for our zone 2 run, we're talking about we're improving and working purely on our aerobic system. Now, when it comes to, well, think about anything in life, having a good, strong aerobic system is going to help you, whether it's sustaining energy throughout the day, you're running, your HYROX, just doing any kind of effort for long periods of time, right? Aerobic capacity is going to be important, as well as having good aerobic system means that, like, if we have a better ability to get oxygen back into the muscle, which is our aerobic system, that means even with our strength training and our high intensity stuff, we're going to be able to recover quicker in between all of those efforts. So you can start to see zone 2 running, or this aerobic system, right, and working on this system, which is such a fundamental foundation, right, is so important, right? So that's why it's a craze. That's why you hear a lot of people, bang on about zone 2 running, and what that should mean for you. So when we look at program design, so in all of our HYROX programs, and when we work with people, like zone 2 running is such a pillar. And you could imagine with HYROX, a lot of the training also is quite intense, whether it's like the strength training, HYROX specific training, engine work, anything like that. It's all high intensity. So if we also now want to get better at running, and all of our sessions just sprint work, fast, long runs, like there is also no break, like in intensity in the week. So zone 2 running can also be that sort of midweek session. We like to put them in around midweek, because it allows us to just like be a little bit easier on the body, to allow the body to actually adapt and to recover from all the hard training, versus Monday hard, Tuesday hard, Wednesday hard, Thursday hard, Friday hard. You're wrecked by the end of the week. So, we can look to do 2 really high quality hard sessions Monday, Tuesday, and we can then have a zone 2 run, so a lower intense session, and then it gets a little bit more intense. We pick it back up Thursday, Friday, and look to the weekend. So that is zone 2 running, why it's important. Now, what the problem is, and a lot of people struggle to get into that heart rate zone, especially when it comes to running, because running is quite strenuous. It's a hard activity to just be jogging for 1 hour straight and to just keep your heart rate really relaxed. It's quite a challenging thing. So if you're a beginner in this space, right, if you're a beginner, there's a couple of things we're going to look at, right? And these things can apply to beginner, intermediate, advanced as well. And we'll talk about all that right now. So beginners, like what I would suggest is, like, we want to be more based on feel to start with, right? So you might go out there and you're running slow, right? And your heart rate's going to be high. It's going to be high, right? So what we like to do is we like to implement a walk run situation, right? So you'll go for a bit of a jog, right? Just say 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? Most people, we start around that 5 minute mark, and then we get you to walk for 3 minutes. So that heart rate's going to come up and then it's going to come down, come up, come down. So what we start to see there is the average of the effort is in a zone 2, right? So that's one way to manage it. And then over time, like let's call it you're running for 5 minutes, that stretches out to 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then we're finding that as you're getting fitter and aerobically adapting, that your heart rate doesn't just keep increasing, because obviously as we're getting more fatigued, the heart rate naturally is going to increase a little bit, right? So just patience, we just got to go through that. What we can find, some beginner intermediates here now too, is that you'll be working in zone 3, so slightly higher, 70 to 80% of your heart rate. But as long as we stay there and we don't rush through that, right? So as long as it's not climbing and getting really high, what we say here is just to stay in that zone 3 for a while. So but stick to the same pace. So if you're running at, let's call it like 5-minute 30 pace, right, as an example, is like just be consistent. Go out for your 60-minute run or your 40-minute run at 5:30, but just that's it. Don't change a thing. And what you will find with all your other training going on is that 5:30 pace, maybe your heart rate sits at 155, but then over 4 weeks, now it sits at 150. Over the next 4 weeks, now it comes to 145. Over the next 4 weeks, now it's like low 140s, right? And then the next 4 weeks, you're now in zone 2, right? For some people, depends on your age, obviously. So see how, by not trying to, because a lot of us, as we get a little bit fitter, what we try then do is run faster because we feel better. But the goal there is not to run faster, just keep the pace the same. And that is how you're going to start to come into zone 2 to get all that aerobic benefit. There's nothing wrong with running faster, but if we're not doing zone 2 training, then we're missing out on all of the potential gains and that we can get into that aerobic system. Right? So that's how we're going to get into that. Now, for more advanced people, right? If you're an advanced sort of athlete, like you're someone that's like not new to training, you got a really big engine, you've got a good aerobic capacity. And I work with a lot of these people as well. The biggest thing is getting you guys and girls to slow down, right? You just want to run too fast. Why? Because it feels good. And same thing, we got to take the approach a little bit, like I said, with the intermediates, where it's like, well, we just have to stick to a pace and allow yourself to adjust down to it. But for most advanced people, you just got to learn to run slow, right? And it comes back to understanding. You got to understand the benefit. You got to understand why zone 2 running is important, because sometimes they fail to miss that. Now, I've been working with some people in particular, and we're focused on zone 2 running, high level athletes, and they struggle to do it. But then now that they're improving in that, everything else is improving. Why? Because zone 2 is the only energy system like where you're purely working on that aerobic system, right? So on a cellular level, there's so much gains to be had by working in zone 2 that you don't even realize can benefit the rest of your training, because we're just used to training hard and thinking that hard equals better, right? Where it doesn't always equal that, right? So that's why zone 2 running is important. And again, I sort of touched on it. I didn't want to make it too technical, but we got to understand that all this has to do with training the energy system. So when we're in a zone 2 or low heart rate, aerobic, when we start training, like let's think like tempo or hit type sessions where we're high, low, high, low. Well, now this is the interplay between, anaerobic and lactic systems, right? Which help your, basically we go from being like using oxygen, not oxygen, oxygen, not oxygen. So if that makes a little bit of sense, where high and low efforts. So that's super important for HYROX. The other side of the energy systems is like pure anaerobic, which is like pure just stored energy, which is like your strength training. So that's why we always got to look at it. There's just the two pillars of the bottom of the triangle, right? Is you got your aerobic system and you got your strength training system. But when we look at that, let's remove the words like aerobic and strength. Let's use the word like, what was I going to say here? Like using oxygen, using no oxygen, right? Like at its purest form. And then HYROX is the interplay between using no oxygen, so fast, high intensity, and then recovering with oxygen. And that's what we call like that lactic zone, right? Where we're just on that red line of how can we go the fastest but sustain it, right? So that's the top of the pyramid. That's HYROX, right? That's hybrid training, right? So hopefully that all makes sense, guys. I'll wrap it up there. So in other words, do your zone 2 training. It's really important, but understand that it takes time, right? It's a journey to get there as well. You're not just going to go nail it first time. The other thing just to add here is there are some other ways that you can zone 2 as well, right? It doesn't have to be running to still get the benefit in your running and your HYROX training. So how can we replace running? Because running, again, is super strenuous. So we can go on a bike, right? Being on the bike is much more controlled, less strenuous, and a much easier way to control and be in a zone 2. You can do swimming, right? You can be on a rower, right? A skier. You can do lots of other ways to do zone 2, right? It does not need to be running to benefit your running, right? Because imagine you're doing like interval runs, you're doing tempo runs, you're doing HYROX workouts with runs, right? So you're doing lots of running, but if you do like a long zone 2 bike ride a week, that zone 2 is going to still aerobically benefit you to your running now. Does that make sense? So the running is a skill, right? But your zone 2 or your aerobic system is an aerobic system. It doesn't matter if you're running, riding, whatever it is. So as long as you're doing the skill, the movement, and then doing the zone 2, like you're going to be getting the benefit. So there we go, guys. Wrap it up. If you've got any more questions, send them through, right? I know you're going to get a lot out of this. Keep training hard, everyone. Appreciate all you guys. Without you guys, I don't have a job, don't have a business. So keep training. HYROX Sydney for us in Australia is the next one on the cards, 15 weeks away. Would love to know, when's your next HYROX? Are you doing world championships? Have you got there are so many HYROX events around the world right now, which is crazy. So I'd love to hear more about it. And as always, if you need help, reach out anytime. That's what I'm here for.